well-known Loomis, breaking down Trey Lance, Christian Watson, and the rest of the NDSU prospects. Back after this.
Let's go get him. Let's go get him today, man. Let's go. Hey, dominate on 3. 1, 2, 3, dominate.
What's up, everybody? I'm back here with another video, and we've got NDSU expert Chad Loomis. Chad, how are you doing today?
I'm great, Rohan. How are you?
Doing good. And I mean, it's the week of the draft. Obviously, a lot of excitement's going on. The 49ers just held their pre-draft press conference with John Lynch, which was essentially word salad. But I'm excited because this time last year, we were talking about one of the more well-known prospects in Trey Lance, kind of a guy from obviously from North Dakota State, an FCS program, and 49er, and flashed in his limited experience. So I'm definitely excited for the draft.
Yeah, you and me both, man. And it's also a pleasure to meet you as well, Marco. This is a nuanced thing for me to have two hosts in here at the same time on an interview. It's kind of cool, this three-way action. So I'm more than happy to answer any questions. And like I said, we're going to do a little bit of a back and forth here so I can learn a little bit more about the 49ers as well. I know that you personally were asking like repeatedly about Josh Babicz. So I didn't know that you guys needed a tight end specifically.
Yeah.
And more than happy to talk about him. But feel free. Go ahead. Start shooting with some questions.
So first and foremost, thank you for – sorry about that, Rohan. I wanted to take a quick time to thank you for your time today to come on and speak NDSU prospects, NDSU, and I also want to talk about the Vikings a little bit every once in a while because I see you wearing a Vikings jersey, so might get some Vikings questions in there. I mean, got a rep. I mean, last time the Niners played you guys, I remember what happened.
Oh, yeah. No, I do too. I remember 5 NFC championships where we couldn't get to the Super Bowl, and then 4 Super Bowls where we couldn't win. You have to be ready for a lot of pain, misery, and crying as an adult male if you're a Minnesota Vikings fan. That's why I always
same thing for a young Niners fan. So we have that same thing. Like we still haven't seen much from the Niners as a young Niner fan. So it's like one of those feelings where it's like I get exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, I don't want to date myself because you guys, I hear you all the time talking about like, oh, well, we haven't gotten to see him go for the 6th. We weren't around in the mid-90s. And I'm like, I need to bow out here because I'm gray and extremely old. So, happy to talk about the Vikings too. But the draft, this is really exciting, not to mention all the variables and the balls that are juggling right now in the air for Shanahan and Lynch and Debo and Jimmy G and like everything, and then you've got that, what was it? Brandon Marshall, right? Brandon Marshall today, that interview that he had on I Am Athlete or whatever it was when Kittle and Sanu were specifically interviewing with him, and he was going off about, asking questions about, is it Jimmy G your favorite or Trey Lance, and where he's at and what he thinks. So that was kind of cool too. So
yeah. And one thing I want to ask you, obviously, you just brought up Jimmy G, the guy who started for the team past year. Obviously, some people wanted him gone last year itself and had Trey Lance become the starter. Unfortunately, we never saw whether Kyle Shanahan would truly start a rookie because Lance hurt himself in the preseason with that thumb injury. So unfortunately, he didn't really get the grasp of the starting role. But in your opinion, Chad, obviously being an NDSU expert and having to watch Trey Lance in college, do you think it was smart for the 49ers to kind of redshirt Trey Lance in his rookie season?
Absolutely. And actually, truth be told, that was the story all along with this. It's been actually uncovered multiple ways and multiple times, but I've been saying it for almost a year. This was all along a redshirt season for Trey. This is what it was scheduled to be. It's just for PR purposes and for what do I want to say, clouding or fogging defensive coordinators as to who they had to prepare for. I mean, if you've got two different quarterbacks that you've got to prepare for, any defensive coordinator will tell you that's a nightmare. So why would you ever name a QB1? They never named officially any week Jimmy G the starting quarterback, if you'll notice that, right? Like, obviously he went out there and he started. He was the starting quarterback, but they would never, specifically Shanahan would never officially name him that. And the reason why is they sat down Jimmy G, John Lynch, and Kyle Shanahan sat down Jimmy G prior to the season and said, hey, you've been great for us. You know, we love you. Look what you've done for this franchise. You brought us back to winning, right? I mean, they were like, tell me if I'm wrong, but wasn't San Francisco like 0-7 or something like that? And then he knocked off like 5 straight wins. So nothing but props to him. But they basically said, you know, you're injured too often and we're a football franchise. We got to look out for our future options. So we're going to draft this guy and you are going to be the welcome wagon. That's why Jimmy G was the first person to text Trey Lance and congratulate him. He wanted to make sure that things were done properly, unlike what was pretty much done to him in Boston with Brady back in the day when he was the guy in Trey's shoes. So it was all along going to be Jimmy G in 21 and then Trey in 22. That's why we NDSU fans always get a kick out of like they still haven't named it officially. And then John Lynch today is like, we think Trey is ready. I'm like, yeah, now you can finally say it for PR purposes. So that's been our opinion all along on it. And yes, I know exactly how hard it is, especially as a fan and especially as a younger fan too. I want to preface with that. It's very difficult to get this new shiny toy that you hear is amazing. Like, you know, he's like the best of the best, cream of the crop, or at least top 4 quarterback, right? And you don't play him. And then the national media takes off on this narrative of Trey couldn't beat out Jimmy or he was hurt or, you know, this, that, and the other. When all along this was the plan was to, I don't want to say groom him, but NDSU has a very firm philosophy, way different than any other college. And that is we redshirt everybody year one. We sit them, we make sure that they're prepared. They don't touch the field. It's like an infant, you know what I mean? Like we make sure that you're ready to run before you touch the field instead of having to watch you grow through the infant stage and the baby stage. We don't want the crawling. Like that's not how you win 9 championship titles in 11 years. That's not how you get FC or FBS teams to avoid playing you. These are just kind of the facts from a standpoint of the way that it's worked for us. Now, I don't want to say like that's the case for everybody, but we honestly believe that that is the case for everyone. So when you hear like, do you think it was a good idea for Trey to sit this year? Unequivocally, absolutely 100%. Now, do I fully believe that he is going to rip it up and tear it up and not go through the infantile stages in September as well? Definitely. The problem is that everybody sees this, that's seen this through the lens of what every NFL team has done prior to this, other than like the Pat Mahomes, which, by the way, is another, feather in the hat, proving that sitting a year actually results in considerably better production. While Mahomes is a freak, there's a lot to be said for that year of development. So, I definitely think it was vital to answer your question in a very lengthy manner.
So then, from your guys' perspective, NDSU fans and people who are plugged in with NDSU, did you guys expect Trey Lance to get drafted that high when he declared for the draft at number 3 overall?
No, so that's kind of a crazy story too, is it all had to do with the pandemic, about the coronavirus and everybody having to sit at home and all these, offensive coordinators and scouts and managers and head coaches and everything, and taking a look more in depth online at prospects. And that's why Trey all of a sudden popped off of the page. I mean, when you've got 42 touchdowns and 0 interceptions, that guy is going to get found on YouTube. And unfortunately, that was the case. And I say unfortunate because we thought we were going to have this kid for another 3 years. Like you and all these prospects, or all these people like the Jim Nagy's and the Daniel Jeremiahs of the world all of a sudden put a huge spotlight on Trey Lance. And we're like, oh, great, here we go again. Same thing has happened with us with Carson Wentz in a sense. Now, the ironic thing is that our other NFL quarterback, Easton Stick, actually notified North Dakota that Trey was being talked about as a first-round draft pick.
Oh,
The head quarterback coach, who we revere as almost a deity, however you want to pronounce it, Randy Hedberg, who we are huge proponents of. He heard about it from Easton Stick, and it was all, in a sense, downhill from there. But yeah.
And you talked about Easton Stick right now, right? And you talked
Yes.
also about the red shirt kind of aspect with Trey Lance. Obviously, in college, Easton Stick was the guy in 2018 before Lance essentially took a red shirt in his college freshman year before becoming the starter in 1920 in that one game season. How do you think that helped him as well? Because you said, right, as NDSU fans, you guys are very big on those red shirts.
Yeah, so especially for quarterbacks regarding red shirts, when you come in, you're immediately put to task of a significant more amount of responsibility than the average college quarterback is. You are in charge of not only looking at game film, but cutting it up, coming up with a game plan, and then organizing and picking the brains of and collaborating with the coaching staff as to what you're going to utilize as your game plan moving forward. So they are a direct coach themselves. And then they lead all of the meetings. Like, all of our quarterbacks are leading the meetings for the entire team. Like, they are taught to be the captain, the leader from a very early point. Trey, coincidentally, was actually cutting up NFL film at age 18 during that freshman red shirt. So it goes like this. Our first quarterback, his name was Brock Jensen. He is fundamentally the first head, the George Washington, right on our Mount Rushmore. We kind of refer to it as our Mount Rushmore. And that was the layering of the foundation and the footings of NDSU quarterback play. So he is the gritty Case Keenum and Easton Stick type of guy. Like, he can't make every throw, but he is going to give you everything he's got. He's Jimmy G in a sense, except for not quite that level of accuracy and quickness as far as his delivery. But then, if it wasn't, the reason why I explain this all out is, if it wasn't for him, then Carson Wentz would not have been an NFL quarterback. If it wasn't for Carson Wentz, Easton Stick never would have been a college NFL quarterback. Same thing for Lance. Lance's dad himself, Carlton, gives Easton a significant amount of credit in everything that Trey has ever done and won. And Trey himself said, like 50% of what I've done here is because of Easton Stick, how he trained me, how he taught me how to break down film, what I'm looking for. And the craziest part is that Trey was doing that since the age of 9 to begin with. So he was fundamentally above and beyond anybody prior to that. So if you layer that he already had the X's and O's to him and the intellect on top of being taught the NDSU way, that's why we're like, nah, NDSU quarterbacks redshirt year 1 and then dominate year 2. It's not even close usually either. It's 6 for 6 as far as championships in combination or complementing both NDSU as far as the NCAA championship and the NFL. If you look at Carson Wentz's 2017. Now, granted, I know that there's a huge faux pas when it comes to talking about Carson Wentz right now. He fell apart at the end of the season. Completely agree with you. He was still a top 10 QBR quarterback, and I've said that a number of times. But yeah, it's definitely a system. It's a machine, and it works. So, like, you don't break what works. You know what I mean? You don't mess with it. Hopefully,
so before we get into talking talking about draft prospects, I want to ask you a question about Trey Lance, because like the Niner fans they're all super pumped that the keys are handed to Trey Lance. What are your projections for Trey Lance in the NFL? Like, what do you think his ceiling is? What he could possibly be, like, base wise, or his floor? Like,
yep. So I don't really want to put too much of a floor on him. He's very comparable to a Josh Allen, like they were talking about today. Also, he himself, even though he doesn't like to compare himself to other quarterbacks, he says he's the Deshaun Watson type, and he is for the most part. Deshaun, I think, is a little twitchier, but those are pretty comparable quarterbacks. I think he's kind of a unique freak animal himself. He's and Jesse had mentioned this as well, is that he has the mentality and the ability of a gunslinger, but in a game manager's mind. So he's overly protective in the choices that he takes, but at the same time, in a half of a second, he'll go 60 yards downfield to a go route. So that's what I would say in regards to him. Like Josh Allen, only a little bit, should be a little bit more polished this year. Not than Josh is right now, obviously, but I'd say that he'll be more comparable to Josh Allen's third year, with Trey's second year right now. Now, as far as like specific numbers, I promised Jesse on his stream that I wouldn't get into specifics as far as numbers, but I will tell you this. Trey Lance will be better than Carson Wentz. We all believe it for the most part in Fargo with NDSU and stuff. And Carson Wentz's second year had 33 touchdowns at the time and was the leader in touchdowns and was the MVP vote leader at the time when he got injured. The Eagles don't win that championship. I don't care what you say. Philly, you go ahead and throw me your hate. They don't win that Super Bowl without Carson Wentz teeing it up for Nick Foles. So inevitably, I don't know. I know he was 33-7. I think he had 7 interceptions and 33 touchdowns for Carson's second year. He was also supposed to sit, by the way. He started, but the NDSU coaches were told by the Philadelphia coaches, Peterson, that he would likely sit. And then, one thing came to another and Sam Bradford got the boot. But yeah, I think pretty comparable to that. The only difference is that Trey's got the added legs. I mean, Carson's always had the legs, but in the same sense that Trey does, every NDSU quarterback is going to be an elite scrambler. That's something that Randy Hedberg instills from a very early point in their development. So you're going to notice like he's going to be doing these weird like hopping back magician get out of sack type things. The difference is that he's considerably faster than Carson Wentz is. So he's going to be able to get a little bit better to the edge. He'll actually occasionally get to the edge, but he can also run up the A gap better than Carson ever could. Carson's always been a little bit fragile. He's got a Superman complex. Love him to death. I think he's going to actually have a top 10 quarterback year in Washington this year just because he has to, or he's pretty much out of the NFL. And I think he knows that writing is on the wall. But as far as Trey Lance, I think he's going to have I think he's going to do significantly better than most people are predicting him at. I'll say that much right now, I guess.
Now,
that's kind of a soft way of answering, but yeah.
For reference, Josh Allen's third year, his MVP-esque season where he was second MVP rating, got 4,500 yards, 37 touchdowns, 10 interceptions, but the most impressive to me was the 69.2% completion rating.
Yes.
And so I like it because it's bullish, right? It's definitely optimistic in a way. The one thing that I don't necessarily know if Lance will meet is Josh Allen had 576 passing attempts. I don't know in this style of offense when Lance isn't necessarily the focal point in a way where we prefer the rushing attack. I don't know if he gets the amount of volume to surpass Josh Allen type of numbers or to reach Josh Allen type of numbers. But I like the optimism definitely coming from you.
Well, I completely agree with you. I don't think he's going to have 30 touchdowns. I don't think he's going to have 4,500 yards, and that was in 16 games, right? I think he's going to have a few hundred less. I think he's going to have a few touchdowns less. But then you also have to add on the rushing touchdowns that he's going to get and the rushing yards that he's going to get. Additionally, you don't have a better quarterback that came out of last year's draft to run a ground and pound team than Trey Lance. Like he's built for equal amount of shotguns and under center at the same time. I mean, that's all NDSU does. If you want to know a lopsided like activity from a rush to passing standpoint, NDSU 75%. Like they literally run 75% of the time. That's why Christian Watson is getting so much crap as he is right now. It's almost entirely based on overall production in addition to like a 12% drop rate that I've dispelled recently. But I agree with you. It's not going to be to that level of production, but most of Trey Lance's like really good stat lines are going to emulate something like he was 20 for 30 as far as passing efficiency, maybe 250 yards. 3 touchdowns, like 2 passing, 1 rushing, and then hopefully like 3 other rushing touchdowns that are distributed throughout your backfield. That's what I kind of foresee happening with Trey Lance. He's not going to be, and I've said this from the beginning, he's not going to be the quarterback that gets you a lot of 350, 400 yard games. He's going to be the guy who is going to be synonymous with a 5, 6, 8, 9 minute long ground and pound drive so that they can run the scoreboard up in the fourth quarter and your defense will be fresh. That's the key to Trey Lance. I think that's one of the big things that people don't realize and miss out on when they're talking about his game, is that he does a phenomenal job of helping the team in ground and pound dominate the time of possession. Like, that's our thing. We're all about like fullback, line of scrimmage, ground and pound, blue collar, smash your face mask into your nose, type of run game. So we're all about wearing down the other team's defense so that we can have a heyday in the fourth quarter, and it tends to usually work out. And our defense then also is stout in the fourth, which is awesome regarding the 49ers, because in my opinion, one of the just like the few negatives that I have that I openly talk about regarding Jimmy G is he's not prolonging. It's not long drives. You know what I mean? It's like a dump off and then a lot of yak, and a dump off and a lot of yak, or a 10-yard pass here or there, or a 15-yard pass. And the defense is on the field way too long. And I think that's entirely why what happened to you guys in the playoffs this year happened, is because you had to rely way too heavily on your defense. And your defense was amazing, by the way. It was stout. I don't blame your defense at all for not beating the Rams. I blame a lack of offensive production. And that's just something that Trey will significantly be better, I think, than Jimmy at.
And to your guys' credit, so he might have Trey Lance might have the opportunity to throw 500 times, because if we look at what Jimmy did, Jimmy threw 440 something passes. Trey Lance had 71. So if Kyle continues like the similar style of offense that he ran with Jimmy, which I'm sure he will, he might up the run game a little bit more to help the fresh quarterback. So he's going to have roughly about 450 pass attempts throughout the season. And if you're saying he's going to have about a 67 completion percentage, whatever the case may be, he could put up the stats that Josh Allen put up, because the 49ers will have an explosive offense with Kyle Shanahan having the ability to throw deep and having the ability to use the entire field. So that's something that I'm excited to see with Trey Lance. So for me, going into the process of the draft, right, because the draft is right around the corner. It's in 3 days. I want to know about a player that I've been telling Rohan about, I've been telling a lot of people about, and I think he is the most slept on tight end in this entire draft. I think Josh Babicz is the one. I would personally put him in my opinion. He's probably about a top 5 to 7 tight end in this draft class, and no one is talking about him because he played at NDSU, which is a smaller FCS school, and so he gets caught in that little. The NFL puts this narrative where if you play at an FCS, you're not good for some reason. When that's actually been disproven by a lot of these athletes. So talk to me about Josh Babicz, because I know there was a tweet you put out and you said I believe you called him Baby Grunk. Is that true that you called him Baby Grunk?
I did just earlier tonight. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So first of all, thank you. I love that. I completely agree with you. He is heavily slept on. I've been, in regards to like social media SEO, I've been doing the pushing of Trey Lance and Christian Watson ridiculously. Definitely Babicz is slept on. Now, while I hate comparing anyone to Gronk, you know what I mean? Like any NFL association, like the Gronk is the best to ever do it. He's going to be difficult to beat him inevitably, but he's the exact same type of measurables. He actually tested better than Gronk did from a pro day and combine standpoint. Actually, I don't think Babicz competed in the combine, but from a pro day standpoint, his RAS and stuff was better than Gronk. I will say, to his accolade and as a positive to him, he played volleyball, which not a lot of people know, and that's a huge thing. He played D1 volleyball, dude, which NDSU, one of our biggest things, and I forget this all the time, when we're recruiting, we're really big on 3 things. One is, in some way, shape, or form, you had to have been a leader, whether that's in your community, doing volunteer work, you individually as an athlete on your, high school, whatever team, if you're a leader. Number two, you have to have the intellect. You have to have the intelligence. We require if you take a look at NDSU's average, GPA, it's one of the highest in all of college athletics when you look at our players. It's a demand that you be highly intelligent because you're taking on the role of coach as an NDSU developed player just as much as you are a player. Josh Babicz knows all the ins and outs of the wide receivers, of the other running backs, of all the fullbacks, of all the quarterbacks. Like, that's your job, is to kind of know everything. That's why we believe so heavily in that year of development. Yes, he's 6'5". If I remember, he's like a 4.6 40, 4.8 40.
I'm looking at his Ross, and I want to say it says 4.87, so it might be a little bit faster, it might be a little slower, depending. I don't know if it was hand time, whatever the case may be, but
yeah. He's not a deer because he's 6'5", you know what I mean? And Christian Watson, I mean, you can't compare that to anyone. And he's like 255, I think Babicz is. He's a phenomenal touchdown pass catcher. You know what I mean? He's the guy that we loved for Trey Lance, and that's one of the major reasons why Christian Watson didn't see any of the production that he did as far as touchdowns in the red zone. We didn't really pass to Christian Watson in the red zone. Most of the times he scored was beyond 20 yards, was him running in a crazy yak play. I mean, that's why he's a freak, dude. We weren't trying to throw him touchdowns. Why? Because our fullback or one of our running backs or our quarterback is going to run it in, or more likely, we're going to throw a foot above where anybody else can jump to because we've got a 6'5" or a 6'6" tight end. So that's what our tight ends are for us. Not to mention, he's absolutely perfect for the 49ers because he's a phenomenal blocker. You don't get to be a tight end on NDSU's team unless you are exceptional at blocking. And Babicz actually prides himself on blocking more than anything else in his game. The Minnesota Vikings actually had a University of North Dakota, not NDSU, but our old rivals, UND, Jim Kleinsasser. He was a huge dude as well, and he could run like a 4.5 40. He was like crazy fast, but he ended up being an excellent pass blocking tight end, where Babicz is both. He's a phenomenal pass and run blocking tight end. So I completely agree with you. He is very underrated, and I think he's heavily slept on. And if you're looking for someone to complement Kittle, he's a touchdown pass catcher. He's a relief valve that comes through like every time. I don't think I ever saw him miss a touchdown pass to catch, which is insane if you think about it.
And even then, like, we're talking about his 40, right? So we talk about like a 4.87. It might be slower or faster. I when I look at 40 times, I like to go at the film and look at the film, and he plays a lot faster than what his 40 shows. Because there was times where he catches a quick pass and he's outrunning these safeties, these corners. And it's like, that is not a dude who runs a 4.87. And a lot of times I like to tell people is just because we see a slow 40 for a bigger guy like 6'5", 6'6", almost 6'6", it's a lot of times the mobility from the hips, it gets tighter. So that's why you don't see as fast as 40s, but it doesn't mean that their long speed is not there. And that's the thing that gets carried away from a lot of fans who think, 40 times shows their speed. It actually doesn't. Play speed is a lot more telling than what a 40 speed is.
Oh, I completely agree with you. His game speed is significantly better than that. I mean, the Niners actually have a very good indication of that as well with Juwan Jennings. Juwan Jennings has a motor like none other in game and didn't test that well. And he was a freak in game at Tennessee, and he's a freak in game at San Francisco. I just think he's been underutilized, but I don't think that's going to be the case this year. I think Jennings is going to have a surprisingly sneaky, like really good season, almost like a Zach Ertz type. I know it's not a tight end, so it's not directly comparable, but I think that he's going to have a really good year this year. And like you said with Ayuk, I definitely want to point this out. Whether, whatever happens with Debo and if they draft Watts, whatever. All I'm saying is the key to Trey Lance is you have to let him go deep early. That is the key. If you don't let him go deep early, then you're going to get those games where you've got like 20 design runs where it looks like Trey Lance can't run and can't keep up with NFL speed. Well, the problem with that is everybody knows that they need to load the box and stop him instead of, being on the balls of their feet and potentially backpedaling because he's going to throw a bomb to somebody. So that's what Christian Watson was to him, is he was the open, like we call him, nicknamed him the Tampa Tornado because he takes the top off of a defense. If you let Trey go deep early, you open up his entire field. All the underneaths are there. His running is going to get better. Your run game and your running backs is going to get better. That's has been the key for Trey Lance since day one. So,
and you brought it up, right? Josh Babicz, the combination in a way of blocking ability and also touchdown ability in 2019, right? At NDSU, when Trey Lance had all those touchdowns passing, 16 of those went to tight ends. Josh Babicz caught 5 of those. And I mean, it just shows, right? I mean, obviously you don't cite that against Christian Watson because they had a certain preference in the red zone. But when you have a touchdown machine like Babicz, who runs fairly well, better than his 40 time indicates, like Marco said, but also with the blocking ability, it's kind of like the best to both worlds of our current seconds in Ross Dwelley and Charlie Warner, where you have one guy who's predominantly known for his pass catching, one guy who's predominantly known for his blocking. Now you get the best of both to a potential tight end 2 to a complement for George Kittle. And like Josh Babicz, I mean, with so much attention towards Kittle, you obviously have, it's one of the best positions where he can go in and succeed because it's going to be a great learning environment, but it's also going to be a place where he has comfortability. So I do think that that'd be a solid place for him to go for the 49ers.
Yeah, he's Babicz is, in my opinion, his ceiling is a Kyle Rudolph type. And I know that like I'm referencing that as the, I've got my Vikings jersey on and I'm just referencing or making an easy or lazy reference. It's actually, I think, pretty possible. That's one of the frustrating things for people looking at NDSU and overall production. When people are like, yeah, but he didn't have the overall production. Well, when you look at when you look at the touchdowns, the lion's share of our touchdowns go to our tight ends, and our tight ends end up being like heavily recruited for their blocking capabilities. But then they're taking away the touchdown production of our fullbacks, our running backs, our quarterbacks, and our wide receivers because it's a totally like unconventional way to go about it. And the thing is that it worked in Boston, obviously with Gronk and Brady, right? So you know that the formula works, and then everybody gets frustrated with NDSU. Well, like if he was this so good, he would have dominated at this level. And it's like, I get what you're saying, but when you've got a top level elite pass game, but you run the ball 3/4 of the time and you never lose, why would you feature the pass game? Why would you throw the ball up with a higher opportunity of turning the ball over? Like, I could understand everybody's frustration or pro-con weighing, where one of the major cons is that, they don't have the same overall production, but you do have to take into account to some certain extent when you're looking at NDSU as it's a machine. It's even, you know what I mean? Like you would expect, like if a run game is dominant, then the pass game must be weak. Or if the pass game is dominant, then the run game must be weak. Well, what if the pass game is elite and it's just sitting behind an elite run game with no reason to use it? So other than the taking the top off, like his father, actually, Christian Watson's dad pointed this out to me, and I didn't even realize it till like a month ago. 90%, like almost exactly 90% of Christian Watson's production was in the first quarter. It was mainly because of those shots of Trey Lance going deep to open up the field. So, and that's the same formula that they went by last year with Cam Miller as well. So, yes. And regarding full circle, Babicz is, if you guys need a tall, touchdown catching tight end that's really good at blocking, he's the best in the class, in my opinion.
So before we get to the most known player from NDSU coming into the draft, I want to talk about a player that has gone a little bit under the radar as well. I personally think he's a better fit at right guard than he is at right tackle. Cordell Volson. Talk to us a little bit about him and what he could bring to an NFL team, specifically like the 49ers. So the 49ers, Mike McGlinchey is coming off a big injury. They there's concerns about whether he's going to be good to play or if he's going to not be good. So there might be a need at right tackle. There might not. But talk to us a little bit about him and if he could play right guard, like the 49ers need a right guard and potentially a right tackle.
Yes. First of all, I see that you've done your homework because, yes, he does do a little bit better at guard than he does at tackle. And he is versatile. I can't speak highly enough about Cordell Volson. We revere our linemen almost as much as our skill position players. I know it doesn't seem like it by my Twitter feed, but legitimately, if you don't take Cordell Volson in the 5th or 6th round, which he might potentially drop to now, you're absolutely insane. He is a draft gem. He had 700 snaps in 2019 protecting Trey Lance and gave up half of a sack. And by half of a sack, I mean in his entire collegiate career, gave up half of a sack, and it was that year. And by collegiate career, I mean he played more college games than any player in the history of college football. He started 65 games. There is no better guard in this. I mean, better tackles, yes, but there's no better right guard in this draft. And he's a draft gem that you can get cheap on the late. If the Niners do not draft him, it would be a huge miss, in my opinion. Because, first of all, he knows Trey's game. He knows how to protect for him. Second, as far as the run game, he is a dominant run game second level pancaker. He has 100 pancakes. He has 100 bulldozes, however you want to reference it. He basically knocked over guys 100 times in our run game in his 65 games that he played. That's a phenomenal stat. If you look that up, like, that is dominant at another level. Now, the problem is he did not get a Senior Bowl invite. He did, however, at the last minute, get a Shrine Game invite, and he did win the award for the best offensive lineman as voted upon by his peers at the Shrine Game. So it's not BS. It's like straight legit because it was voted on by everybody else that was there. And just like with Christian Watson in the Senior Bowl, if you're a deep diver and you do true, like, full all-encompassing sports analytics when it comes to the draft process, if you look up the tweets and the film with Cordell Volson at the Shrine Game, yeah, it's hands down. It's no contest. He didn't have a problem with anyone. Like, he dominated to that level. It was from what I heard from people back in Fargo, they were like, yeah, it was no thing. it was just another game for him. Nobody touched, whoever it was that the Cincinnati Bengals just signed for Burrow, and he was like, yep, new bodyguards in town, nobody's going to touch him. That's Cordell Volson with Trey Lance, in my opinion. It's kind of cut and dry that way. So yes, thank you for bringing him up. He's also very versatile. He can play guard, he can play tackle on either side. Definitely the best at right guard.
And you're right. I mean, right. He played over 100 snaps at left tackle. Majority he played at right tackle, but he slid in at both guard spots. I think he is the epitome of versatility. And like you said, one of the skills that Cordell Volson has had over his collegiate career doesn't allow sacks. He didn't allow a single one, really, over his entire collegiate career. And that is not only with Trey Lance under center, but over the last year as well in 2021. So that's kind of a good portion of how you can see Cordell Volson. And obviously he's got the run game skills in the outside zone scheme playing at NDSU. So I think that definitely is a benefit. Now, would he come in and start necessarily at right guard for us? I'm not exactly sure, but the 49ers always embrace competition. John Lynch said it himself today. And I think that the 49ers also value a lot of players that can play versatile positions. Just on our offensive line, we have Dan Brunskill, who's had experience at guard, tackle, and center. We have Justin Skule. We have Jalen Moore, who's likely to slide in this year. So we have a good amount of players that are versatile, and adding one more to the piece, especially when our interior offensive line might be in question with Alex Mack retiring, I think it would be valuable to add depth at that position in the draft.
Is it for sure that Mack is retiring? I hadn't heard. I heard rumors about it, but I didn't know.
That's the rumor, and then the way John Lynch made it seem today, he was saying, I'm going to allow Alex Mack to pretty much announce what he wants to do or not, pretty much saying he's going to allow for Mack, in my opinion, to retire on his terms. So that's what I took from it. But going on Volson a little bit, I'm going to throw a number out there, 4. So the reason why you draft a player like this is the number 4 championships that he won, right? He's bringing in championship mentality. He knows what it takes to win. And that's something you want to bring in when you already have a culture like the 49ers or whatever your team you're trying to build. If you're trying to bring in a winning culture, you bring in guys who have that winning mentality and knows what it takes and that work ethic. Because what I see from NDSU, it's literally a miniature Alabama, a miniature Clemson at the FCS level. So that if you're going down to the FCS level, that's the cream of the crop. And if you're going to get a player from that school, you're definitely getting a workhorse and a winner.
So I completely agree with you. And something that I don't talk about nearly enough, and I get to all the time on streams regarding like Christian Watson and Trey Lance, is the character of NDSU players. And I don't want to be all encompassing because everybody's their own individual, but they get taught very early that you are an ambassador. You're a reflection on everybody who helped you to get to this point, and you have to respect each and every one of them. So if you screw up, you know what I mean, like in your personal life or whatever, that's a reflection on everybody. And it's like a shame thing. We kick, the NDSU is when I reference a machine, it's just like it's a John Brown hind parts, kick your butt if you do something wrong, 20 push-ups if you miss a pass on a quick dump off, like for Christian Watson when he did that at the Senior Bowl. I don't know if you guys saw that or not, but he missed a pass, immediately jumped down and started doing push-ups. And that's what he learned at NDSU. And at the same time, it also, if you keep using that on your own personal time and your own, as you continue your journey as a football player, you're going to keep yourself to a higher standard. When it comes to Cordell Volson, he is the absolute best of us, of NDSU. That kid taught and took leadership at the senior level to another level. He is so proud of the time that he spent on the line for NDSU. His brother actually is in the NFL as well. He might be on a practice squad right now. Last time I had heard, it was for the New York Giants. But Cordell is going to be very good. I don't want to say he's going to be elite. Trey Lance is going to be elite. Christian Watson, in my opinion, will be elite. Cordell Volson is just going to be a solid all-around great player, but he's going to be the guy that works his butt off every day in practice. He's going to be the guy that goes to the whistle every day in practice, and he's going to throw you on the ground with his arms and laugh about it and be mean about it, and he's going to throw safeties and DBs out of the way of his running backs and make it hurt. Like, he prides himself on being mean and then stepping off the field and being the nicest guy in the world. A lot of offensive linemen are that way. He does have a mean streak, and like what Pennington did at the Senior Bowl practices. If anybody was watching the UNI offensive tackle, Pennington, who's like listed at like 2 or 3 as far as number like tackle right now. Cordell Volson's kind of the same way as far as meanness and trying to like psychologically get in the head of the defender, only he's better than Pennington. And that's like one of the things that I'm trying to get out there is he's playing guard, and yes, Pennington's better at tackle, but Volson is better at guard and has the versatility of playing at a high level of tackle. So if again, I can't speak highly enough of Cordell Volson. To us, it's like not taking Christian Watson in this draft. Now, while we know that he's not the elite of, you're going to get your Michigan, Ohio State, your Wisconsin, your Iowa, your Georgia, your Alabama linemen. Like, that makes sense, right? But he is the best that we've probably ever put out. And if somebody passes up on him, especially at the value that they have, he will definitely be a starter after this coming year, if not get rotated in immediately. He's a super senior, right? He's seen more college football games than anyone. He is ready to plug and play. I think it's just a matter of him getting the reps ahead of time and not knowing the rest of your line personally from a talent evaluation standpoint, I guess.
Yeah. So. And I mean, Cordell Volson and obviously Josh Babicz, 2 of the underrated pieces of NDSU. But let's talk about, apart from Trey Lance in this draft at least, let's talk about their prime superstar, right? Christian Watson, freak of nature, 6'4", 208, like runs a very fast 40 time, I think 4.36. But to me, really, when I was watching his film, I was very intrigued because he is the epitome of a deep threat. When you look at his yards per catch over his 3 years, 18.6, 24.3, 21.5, 18.3. Like, it's such high numbers, and that, like, when I see those numbers, at least in this NFL, who got those numbers this year? And that was Deebo Samuel. And I'm wondering, like, I'm not comparing the two at all together. I'm just wondering, like, looking at Watson as a deep threat, I think he has so much to offer. What are your original thoughts on Christian Watson as a receiver?
He is being referred to as the freak in this draft. It's funny, they came out on the NFL Network today and we're talking about Trey Lance Burks and how he's the only guy that could be like Debo-esque. And I'm like, yeah, if you want a weaker, shorter, slower, less versatile, worse blocking than Christian Watson, sure. Yeah, absolutely. And I love Trey Lance Burks. He's phenomenal. I'm a big-time Razorbacks fan. I got to see him at War Memorial Stadium a couple of years ago. I love that kid. I got nothing against him, but I don't think that anyone in this draft is Deebo, even though it's extremely deep wide receiving. I think Deebo is a generational type of player. And as much as I want Christian Watson to get drafted by San Francisco, as much as I want him to get paired back with Trey Lance, and trust me, no one on the planet, I think, wants those two combined more than I do, I still would rather have Deebo for Trey, especially since they created that rapport and brotherhood last year. I mean, half of Deebo's passing touchdowns were thrown to him by Trey Lance in 2.5 games. How could you not want to stay in San Francisco and repeat that performance? So it's my personal opinion. I think Deebo's going to stay. I really do. I just think it's a matter of this is all smoke and mirrors for getting the money, you know? But from a Christian Watson standpoint, he's a freak. He's the guy that you give the ball to and you know that every play he could go for a score. It's just the way that he worked. Every 3 plays or 30% of his plays went for over 20 yards. He had some crazy stat like 14 touchdowns were over 40 yards. So it's just a matter of we underutilized him. We tried to get him involved in a multitude of ways with jet sweeps. We even used him as running back a couple of times. We did reverses. We did double reverses. I would have loved to have seen an opportunity like Deebo got where he threw a touchdown. Christian is an all-around freak. The only reason why everybody didn't know about him is because he went to Plant High School in Tampa, which is a phenomenal resource of talent. And he wasn't even like the top 2 or 3, I think, as far as in his own school. The reason being is he was short. He was like 5'11", 6 foot his senior year. And then he sprouted in his time in Fargo, like right before the end of his senior year for high school football. And then all the way up until now, actually, he's grown from under 6 foot to 6'4.5". So he is a freak in every way possible. He can one-hand grabs. He can be on 50-50. His body control and catch yak capability is it's unparalleled in this draft. He's that guy where you look at his draft tape, right? Like you look at his game film and his highlight film, and you're just like, what am I looking at here? Because this looks weird. It looks alien. Like he's not moving normally, right? Like he's flying through defenses, not just like taking off. He's outrunning by 20 yards the defenders. There wasn't a single cornerback other than Zion McCollum at Sam Houston State that kept up with him at the FCS level. Now, granted, I've heard a lot of people be like, yeah, well, once he gets to the NFL, he's not going to be breaking away from people like that. Well, let me ask you this. What other NFL players do you know in the history of the game that have ever run 23 miles per hour multiple times in game? I know 2. One of them used to be a San Francisco 49er that's now, unfortunately, thanks to Mike McDaniel on the Miami Dolphins, and the other one is Tyreek Hill. That's the type of speed. I don't think you've seen the top-end speed for Christian Watson because he reaches this other level, very much like Trey Lance Burks, by the way, of ball tracking. Like, you put the ball far enough out in front of him, he reaches a whole new gear to get to that ball. And he basically, like Willie Mays, tracks down balls. I don't want to say like directly over the head, but he is awesome at like a center fielder tracking down deep balls. So when you've got a guy who can throw in a half of a second 80 yards to a kid who can run 23 miles per hour, that's why I keep saying that Christian Watson and Trey Lance were better than Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow in LSU in 2019. Now, production, that's insane to say, right? But I do think that they have the talent to beat them. And I would love if somehow the Niners drafted Christian Watson and they had an opportunity maybe next year to play the Bengals, because I know they don't this year, unless we're talking about deep into the playoffs. But Christian Watson, I can't give you enough rave reviews about. I know his family. His dad knows me, his brother, his aunt, his uncle. And they've all in some way, shape, or form been around professional football, whether that be college football or actually, his dad played on various teams. And the thing that kills me and sticks a stake in my heart, and he knows this, by the way, too, is that he wants Christian to go to the Packers or the Kansas City Chiefs. And for him to go to the Packers, I'd die. I would die a lot inside. As a man, I would probably cry, just because the Packers to me are the Seahawks to you. You understand, right? Like, if your favorite college player and it went to the Seahawks, you'd be like, if DK Metcalf was, where was it the DK came from? Wherever he came from. But if DK was your favorite college football player at the time, like, it would break your heart, right? So that's how I feel about Christian Watson. And I have a lot more to say about Christian and a lot more in depth, but I want to do that if the 49ers actually do draft him. Like, I'll just go off on a 15-minute tangent talking about him. So, Amin the Dream, how's it going, brother?
So he's got a question for you here, real quick, Marco.
Yes.
Vikings space. What's your record prediction for the Vikings?
Probably 9-8, honestly. It feels like we Vikings fans get our hopes up way too often, and that's the biggest problem, is they continually get our hopes up. No NFL team had closer games that they lost this past year than the Minnesota Vikings, and it wasn't even close. I mean, it was like 9 of our games were decided in the last 30 seconds. It was heartbreaking. I think, maybe a 9-7 record, but I think the Green Bay Packers will dominate our division until we slay the Aaron Rodgers dragon, which, by the way, I'm really excited about. If Trey can somehow get you guys back to an NFC championship, I'm not saying that the Green Bay Packers will be there, but I will say that NDSU quarterbacks are built to beat Green Bay quarterbacks. It wasn't a coincidence when Carson Wentz went into Lambeau a couple of years ago and outdueled Aaron Rodgers in the frozen tundra, because that's exactly what they're built for. They're built for efficiency and being able to lead a team down the field in an 8-minute drive, and that's what he did. So that's kind of the part of our secret sauce. So hopefully that answers that.
Going into Christian Watson, because I know you just got done with the Vikings, I actually think they're going to be around that 9-7, potentially a game or two less, because of their defense is just horrific still.
Yeah.
And if they could build if they could build that side of the ball, then things could get rolling, because their offense is there. They have Dalvin Cook, Justin Jefferson, Adam Thielen when he's fully healthy is a stud. And Captain Kirk is a better quarterback than a lot of people give him credit for. So that's a team that could be scary if their defense could get right, because their offense is right. Their defense needs to follow suit.
So, for the past 2 decades, I want to say we've been playing this continual game of trying to bolster the offensive line, and then it turns out we've got a young and inexperienced defense that can't hold. And then we bolster our defense by drafting a couple of cornerbacks. I don't know why the Minnesota Vikings have such a hard-on for cornerbacks, but we do. Every draft, we're drafting multiple cornerbacks. It's like you'd think somebody that's scouting for that position for the Minnesota Vikings would lose their job because they're so bad at it. In line with the quarterback scouting individual as well. Al, I completely agree with you that Kirk Cousins he's better than Jimmy G. He's like a top 12, 10 to 12 quarterback, but he is never going to be the guy. And the problem is he's getting the guy numbers, right? Like as far as our salary, like at the time he said an unprecedented amount of money that he was getting, and now we're extending it another year. The ironic thing is that the Minnesota Vikings were looking to trade up last year potentially for a quarterback, but if they were going to trade up, they were going to go after Justin Fields and not Trey Lance. I don't why in Minnesota sports that it is fundamental. Don't draft in your own backyard because no decent athletic individual can be drafted in Minnesota. But it's a farce, and it's like this ironically comedic thing that all of this amazing talent keeps coming out of Minnesota, and they keep screwing it up. Like they could have had Trey Lance if they wanted. Trey was a Minnesota Vikings fan. His dad's still a Minnesota. Well, I guess he was. He's not anymore, obviously. They're all San Fran fans, but yeah. Oh, and by the way, I did want to mention Trey was just, what was it, yesterday back in Fargo for the spring game.
He was.
Right.
Watch, it's dead serious. Like, if you want to be watching some fun college football play, watch Bryce Lance this year. I don't like a couple of times.
I thought he's redshirted, though.
No, that was last year. That's what I'm saying.
Oh,
like
okay.
This is the big year. Like he had a couple of weeks where he was the MVP of the scout team, and usually that's a very good indication for us that it's going to be something. And if it's a Lance, they're going to be good no matter what. So I'm really excited. And the ironic thing is also that the production that we had that's leaving a gaping hole in our receiving core from Christian Watson is expected to be filled in by Trey's best friend and his brother. So it's
his best friend to Sproul, last name Sproles, correct?
Yep, Phoenix. Yep, Darren Sproles' cousin. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
And Phoenix is awesome in his own right. He's just short, so it's really hard to, it's hard to talk about those players, but he has a motor on him. He definitely does. It's not elite, but he has no problem playing the slot and catching balls when he knows he's going to get killed. And to have somebody who's willing to get like clotheslined in the, in the secondary and has no fear when going after a ball, like he's Trey's boy. He had his back. So he was great. They were a good team. I'm interested to see if he might have a shot next year of going to the NFL. I guess we'll see.
So going back to Christian Watson. So one thing I do notice about Christian Watson, like watching his film and everything he does is fantastic. The speed, the height, the physique is there. But now watching a bigger guy run routes, so at times coming out of breaks, he looks a little bit slower, or his route running isn't as crisp as you would want for a guy going in the first round, right? But then he goes to the Senior Bowl and he disproves that narrative in a way because he is running very, very crisp routes, and he's looking like in my opinion, he looked like the best receiver at the Senior Bowl. It was him, and I would probably put him and Sky Moore there because Sky Moore looked phenomenal at the Senior Bowl as well. So
yeah, he did.
Talk to me about Christian Watson's route running ability and what his route running would bring to any team in the NFL, not necessarily the 49ers, but in general, what would his route running bring to an NFL team?
Okay, good question. And as far as your reference to the Senior Bowl, Trevor Sikkema of PFF tweeted that wide receiver Christian Watson has been the best wideout at the Senior Bowl practices all week, and today is no different. Pretty sure I didn't see him lose a single rep in one-on-ones. I'm sure you guys saw that as well. And it's not just Tampa Bay Trey who's saying that either. The footage and reviews all back it up, showing Watson's body control, his suddenness, his superior athleticism. And the funniest part to me was they kept putting out every day the GPS for each individual wideout. But at the same time, no one gave Christian a long deep ball. Like they kept underthrowing him. So nobody got to see him run at 23 miles per hour. They all saw like 20 and a half to 21 and a half. And Christian was continually joking on social media and told his dad, like, maybe I should start running routes on the sidelines. Like it was just this comedic thing of like, this dude can blow everybody away and they're not giving him the opportunity to do it. To me, it was very similar to when Trey Lance was trying out for the Elite 11 and all these other quarterbacks were jumping in line in front of him and him being like this respectful and shy kid, which is another big thing about Trey Lance is he's probably too shy and too respectful. So this whole thing about like lacking confidence or isn't ready to be a leader, that's complete baloney. Like he is absolutely fundamentally a leader and knows how to do it. It's just that he does it in his own way. And he's very respectful. Like he doesn't want to be like, yeah, I'm better than Jimmy G. Give me the job. He knew who he was coming in. He knew he was the number 3 draft pick and everybody was going to have this, like, you know, this kid's going to have a chip on his shoulder and he's going to think he's better than everyone. And he knew better. He knew to keep his head down, shut up, stay focused, ask questions, make sure to be involved in everyone on the team, pat on the butt every time a player comes off the field, to like promote people and what they're doing in their personal lives, wish them a happy birthday on social media, and then also let them know that he is fundamentally involved. Like he is absolutely studying his butt off. He's learning everything that there is to learn. Any minute adjustments that needed in the offseason, he's been making them. Like he is the most focused and driven football player I have ever seen. And I realize I just went off of subject. In regarding Christian Watson in his route tree, granted, he doesn't have a huge route tree, but the problem is that people keep thinking beyond the KISS theory, and the KISS theory being keep it simple, stupid, right? If you've got a guy who does a go route and scores like every time on that go route, why does he need to be running curls and posts? And you know what I mean? Like anytime he was asked to do that, he had no problem doing it and did it. But they only lined him up 17% of the time in the slot. The reason why is he's the ultimate X weapon. Why not use it that way? Very much like Tyreek Hill, right? Like when they send him on a go route, everybody's like, well, how come he's not doing a deep cross? Because he runs 23 miles an hour. That's why. Because he's literally outrunning everyone. So why? Now, a limited route tree, yes. Is that coachable as well? Definitely. So I guess I would say that. Amin had another question. Should I
Yeah, so
go for it.
I'm in the dream. He goes, would you say Lance is a better leader than Wentz and Easton Stick? That's a very great question, actually.
It is a great question. I would say equal to Easton and more so than Carson. Carson's a good leader. He just has a difficult time talking to his teammates versus telling his teammates something, but he never had an issue. And I mean, you can look up interviews with Jonathan Taylor regarding how Carson was in the locker room and in the huddle and stuff. Like, I know that he had issues with like the coaching and the ownership and stuff, but I don't know any of the details of that. But so, yeah, I'd say he's equal with Easton Stick. It's very hard for us. Easton Stick, in my opinion, is number 2 on the all-time Mount Rushmore for NDSU, which is insane because the 2 lowest talent quarterbacks, I would say overall, are probably our number 1 and number 2, just because of the grittiness and their storyline for how they played and what they did at NDSU to prolong and continue the machine that is winning nonstop championships. So, but as far as Christian Watson, one of my personal rules of scouting is don't confuse did not. There's a major difference between being capable and not being able to do something. For example, Garrett Wilson will never be as fast as Christian Watson, right? Like it's just freak of a human being, talent, ability. Now, I'm not putting down Garrett Wilson by any means, but I don't think that there's anything that a wide receiver is asked to do that Christian Watson can't do at a high level. It's just that he wasn't asked to do it at NDSU. What you're asked to do at NDSU is be an ultimate blocker no matter where you're at and realize that the big play that you have running a touchdown for 70 yards or whatever was entirely because of the blocking of the other 10 players on the field. So when somebody else gets the ball, Christian, you need to be the guy utilizing your freakish ability blocking out in front. If you actually look at the game film instead of just the highlight reel of Christian, you're going to see the majority of the plays that you see go deep, Christian's out front blocking. And that's another thing about Cordell Volson also that I wanted to amend or add was I think about a week ago, I posted on my Twitter feed a lot of the plays that you see in the highlight reels for Christian Watson and Trey Lance, you get to see some of those plays, but from a different camera angle, directed at the line with a circle, like a huddle type of circle where you're watching game film and you see the exact player and what they do. And it focuses on number 67, which is Volson. And you get to see that the reason why Trey had all that time to deliver that deep ball was to Christian Watson. Like those three, especially in tandem, were magic. So if you could somehow rekindle that in San Francisco, yeah, absolutely. But that's only if Debo's gone, because I don't think there's any way in the world you're going to get Christian Watson without, if Debo's on that team. If you get, Jesse asked me this question. If you get Debo and Christian Watson on the same team with Trey Lance, George Kittle, Brandon Ayuk, that's a Super Bowl. I predict that. I put $5,000 on that, and I'm not joking. And I know that everybody be like, that's insane. Everybody's always called me insane, boys. They've always called me insane. In 2019, I projected Trey Lance as quarterback 1. How far was I off? 2. In 2019, I projected Christian Watson as wide receiver 1. Right now on big boards, there's some that are putting him, I think Chris Sims last week put him at number 2. Most of them are somewhere in the 5 to 7 number range. But I'd say 3 years ago, to name those two and be within that number, the insanity is panned out for the most part. So when it comes to NDSU, I have a pretty good projection of what they're going to do in the NFL. So,
and for Christian Watson, so like the question I asked was more so to see like the projection, right? Because the limited route tree, the FCS level, and obviously the production due to the opportunity, like you keep saying the opportunity with the big reason for the lack of production. Can you see him falling in this draft due to the lack of production of the small school and the limited route tree?
One, crazier things have definitely happened, but based on the amount of in-person team meetings that he's had, every NFL team has a top 30 list that they do and they bring players in. Christian was like double the number of in-person meetings as Williams, Olave, Wilson, all the top wideouts. So as much as I wish that were the case, I don't think it's going to be. But crazier things have happened, dude. I've seen crazy things happen in the draft where you're just like, like Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers, right? Like they both dropped considerably from where they were projected. But I just don't think so based on specifically the need right now. I mean, Tyreek Hill needs a replacement. Devontae Adams needs a replacement. And I foresee that he could be plug and play in week 1. When it comes to the red shirting philosophy that we have, that we apply to all players, that's for college, right? But more specifically for the quarterbacks in the NFL. The reason being is Randy Hedberg, our quarterback coach, was the Tampa Bay Buccaneers quarterback in I think 1977. And he is self-admittedly was way over his head. Like he was out of his depth. So that's why he became the type of quarterback coach that he did, where he fundamentally believes you need to sit and learn. Now, the thing is that this is organically catching on in college and in the NFL. It's going to become, and again, this is my opinion, but I think it's going to become the constant. I think that's going to be the regular. If Trey Lance pans out, I foresee this happening considerably more frequently in the NFL, where they're going to sit the quarterback for development if they legitimately think that he has a chance. Where you guys all thought that Trey sitting year 1, or I don't want to say you, like you personally, but 49er fans, let's put it that way, for the most part, all thought that Trey wasn't able to beat Jimmy G out for the starting job. Well, that was never the case. And if you understand that, and that national media had the complete wrong narrative, it makes a lot more sense. You're like, oh, so he could be an elite quarterback, and they were intentionally doing this. And all along, I've been saying, yes, that's exactly what we're saying. He's 100% elite. This is all intentional. But you guys are listening to the national media, and a lot of the Bay media as well, all specifically stating, other than I want to give, is it Jack Hammer, right? Is that his name?
Jack Hammer.
Was the Democrat, right?
Yeah.
Reporter. I'm going to give you props, Jack. You absolutely were stating from the beginning that the plan was to redshirt or develop Trey and sit him for a year. Now, it didn't make sense because Kyle Shanahan is not only a genius in the playbook, he's a genius when we're talking about all aspects of your football team. And by that, I mean, yeah, he's never going to say Jimmy G is starting when then defensive coordinators have to account for Trey Lance, at least in some of the preparation that they do. So that makes total sense. Why would you ever name a starting quarterback? Why would you also specifically name Trey Lance a starting quarterback now when you got Jimmy G on the roster and you're trying to offload him? It only makes total sense that you would continually lie. And you can't be offended as a fan base. He's definitely doing what is best for your team, but it's a lot of smoke and mirrors and PR game that you're working with. It's the same thing that's going on with Debo and contract negotiations, So I guess that's my opinion on the matter.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair for sure. Any closing thoughts from you, Chad, or are we good to go?
No, not specifically. Like I did want to pick your brains because I wanted this to be a little bit of a back and forth. Like, what do you two personally see as fundamentally the most important areas to address in this draft for the Niners?
So, me personally, I've been on record saying safety. I think that's my most important position of need because I wasn't necessarily impressed by how the 49ers addressed the position in this offseason to date, is what I mean. But I do think that they do have the ability to address the position and get a day one starter at the safety position in the draft, be it at 61, be it at 93, or even if they trade Deebo Samuel and get capital that way, they can get a safety in the end of the first round, somewhere like that, somewhere like a Lewis Ney or a Daxton Hill or somebody like that. So I think that that's my main thing. Another position maybe that you'd look to, apart from safety in a way, I don't necessarily think there's like a ton of immediate holds. I think that they have the luxury to go best player available at multiple positions just because they're fairly strong on their roster. It's now how do they fill it out? And so to me, I think that safety is a must in this draft, but you don't necessarily have to draft it with your first pick. What about you, Marco?
That was definitely one of the questions. Yeah.
So for me, I would go interior offensive line, whether that's center or right guard. And the reason is because I really believe Alex Mack is retiring the way John Lynch sounded, the way the media has kind of pointed at that way, and Matt Milko has kind of hinted at that. So I think center is the biggest position of need if Alex Mack retires. And then from there, it goes receiver. I think Debo's being moved. A lot of people don't think Debo's being moved, but the way John Lynch spoke today, right? If you know you're gonna solve the issues with Deebo Samuel, you're not gonna be saying don't ask questions about Debo, right? Because
that's a good point.
Because the thing is if you know you're gonna work things out with Deebo Samuel, you're gonna want all the questions so you could answer with as much confidence as possible, and letting Debo know through the media that, hey, you're our guy, we're going to solve things out. But instead, he was more, and you could even watch the body language of John Lynch. As soon as he said, don't ask me questions about Deebo Samuel, he got very uncomfortable, right? And I've never seen John Lynch get uncomfortable speaking to the media. He is a former media guy, and I've never seen him get uncomfortable in a press conference where he just kept going here, kept going to his water constantly, and that's not how John Lynch normally is. So to me, I was reading the body language. I've been a very big on saying I think we were going to trade Debo as soon as the offseason ended. I've been one of those guys who said that there was a drift between the 49ers and Deebo Samuel. So I do think Debo gets moved. So my two top positions, I would say right now, are center, right guard, interior offense line, whether that's a center or guard, and receiver.
What do you, if you don't mind me asking, who do you currently have, like third team, second team, practice squad, whatever? Like, who do you have as a backup for Mac? And had they had any experience or rotating in with Mac? So, like, where are they currently sitting situationally for the center position?
So I believe you could quote me if I'm wrong, Rohan, but I believe the backup position is Jake Brendel and Daniel Brunskill. So, like, those are the two guys that they would rotate in, but Daniel Brunskill is their starting right guard at the moment. He is not the greatest right guard in the world. He's an average NFL guard, but you could upgrade from that. Like, he is a little bit below average majority of the time. but he could get by with them. So I think that's kind of worrisome with a young quarterback coming into the mold, and you're also going to be starting a young left guard in Aaron Banks. So that's what worries me the most.
Correct what Marco said in that it is Brendel and Brunskill. John Lynch's words today, and when he was addressing the center position after talking about Alex Mack, he gets to choose whether he comes back or not. He said first Brunskill, and then he said that they also have guys like Brendel. So it kind of makes sense that Brunskill might slide over to center. We might have Jalen Moore slide in at right guard, and that might be Banks, Brunskill, Moore as our interior. So yeah, right now we do have Brendel, who the 49ers feel somewhat confident about. They re-signed him to be the backup for the second straight year, but I think he is a replacement level center. Brunskill, like Marco said, is an average caliber NFL player at the offensive line. I wonder if they do slide him to center, if they don't draft a guy, but it seems like Marco said, that we are looking to at least draft a player, and if not, attack the position in free agency with a player like J.C. Tretter, who's at the tail end of his career, but still a serviceable starting caliber NFL center.
All I will say is if Alex Mack is for some reason or somebody can splice this up or cut it or somehow he stumbles upon this video, stick around for one more year. Just one. You never know. It might be the year.
And that would be awesome,
very
right?
helpful for the 49ers, yeah.
Yeah, it would be.
The way we want it to happen, and I think all the 49er fan base wants it to happen, is Alex Mack to come back one more year. The 49ers to draft a center in the draft, whether that's Cam Jurgens, a lot of people like Cole Strange. There's a lot of centers in this class.
I've heard Cole Strange. Yeah.
So that's what the 49ers fans want, for one more year of Alex Mack to help groom a young center coming forward. So that's where we're standing at. That's where we're at right now. Going to your Vikings, right? Because we want that dialogue, right? Where do you think the Vikings address with their first pick? Because that's something that we should monitor as well.
I think we're going after Stingley. I think we're, like I said, we have a cornerback fetish, and I don't know if we'll ever get over it, even with new ownership, new head coach, all that. But if we can honestly bolster our defense, I think we have a chance. It's all going to come down to if Kirk Cousins can make some big plays and get us to the playoffs, and then in the playoffs, if he can be that guy. Everybody has labeled him as not that guy, and a couple of times he has proven people wrong. I want to be proven as wrong as possible because to me, he's our Jimmy G. And I know that he's actually a little bit better than that, but he's, serviceable. I can't even speak. Serviceable to good and not great. So it's going to be, we always go after an offensive lineman, but we never do it in the first round. And that's the problem, is we always go after secondary defense, it feels like, in the first round, or a big-time skill position like a person, which is absolutely awesome that dude fell to us. I'm a huge fan of LSU, of Joe Burrow, of Jamar Chase, and me, poking and prodding the bear is nothing but love from our stamp. We honestly believe that we would love to see that head-to-head matchup. But yeah, we're probably going to go offensive line after that. I hope. We always need offensive line help. Our offensive line, whoever is doing the evaluation there, is also terrible. Like, we always do really good at drafting running backs. We always do really good at drafting wide receivers. And I feel like the rest of it seems to be a total crapshoot. Although, we have nailed some dimes too. Our safety, Hitman Harrison Smith, is like none other. Homegrown Adam Thielen. I actually used to work with a relative of his, and like that story is just unbelievable. So we've got a lot of faith. The problem is we never want to get our hopes up. And the other worst problem is we always do, especially when you're talking about like last second games in the last 30 seconds and you've got the ball and an opportunity to drive and win. Like, they get your hopes up and they dash them all the time. So this season, I'm going to be steeled for a while and not get my hopes up too early, and then live vicariously through Trey Lance in the San Francisco 49ers during that period of time. Now, when we start to ramp up and actually win a couple of games and stuff, yeah, I'll set myself up for heartache again. I'm a born loser. It's okay. So I had nothing further. Did you guys want to ask me anything else, or maybe close with Trey Lance? Because we actually didn't even talk that much about Trey.
I would love to talk about Trey so it's very funny because the year he was supposed to have his last year, right? So the 49ers, I believe it was 2019. No, 2020. Yeah, 2020, the 49ers
The one
weren't
game.
having the greatest year. Yeah, so the 49ers weren't having a great year to start the season. And it was Jimmy gets hurt.
You were
whatever the
riddled
case
with
may be.
injuries, right?
Yeah, riddled injuries and everything. And I was actually podcasting with Trey Lance in an edited 49ers jersey in like November. And I have a TV. I have a TV like right next to me, so I had it like Trey Lance was my background. So I've been very high on Trey. I tweeted before the season had started, Trey Lance is QB1. I had tweeted that before the draft or before the season had even started. I started watching more film. Started watching a little bit more film, and then he was about. For me, I had him QB1, QB 1A, 1B with Justin Fields. I think both of those two QBs are the best two QBs in that draft class. I was called ridiculous. I want to hear from you. What makes Trey Lance so appealing, and why should the fan base be so intrigued to have a young quarterback like Trey Lance leading the way? Because you compared him to Josh Allen, and guess who else? I just saw right now. I was checking on George Kittle, what he just said. He compared Trey Lance as well to Josh Allen. So talk to us more about that.
I think that, and I kind of go off the rails a little bit on this. I'm extremely biased. But I think he is, at this point in time, at this age, the perfect culmination of everything that you want in a quarterback. And by that, I also like to justify that because that seems about as Homer and 12-year-old boy with a football fetish as it gets, right? So it's a combination of having a father who instilled a competitiveness at an early age. That's every football player ever. But his dad would take him, when you grow up in Minnesota in the upper Midwest, it's unlike when you grow up in the South or on the West Coast with California and stuff, where you guys can play the same sport year round, right? Where with us, we can't in the winter because it's like negative 20 degrees for, multiple weeks. So we have to play indoor sports in a variety of things. Okay. So he had the multi-sport background. That multi-sport background lends you to changing angles, right? Off-platform ways of playing the game, like when you're backhanding a ball down third base and gunning it towards first base, and you're throwing, off angle. That's the stuff that Pat Mahomes does. That's the stuff that he got from his father. His father was a Minnesota Twins pitcher. I don't know if you knew that or not, but Pat Mahomes actually lived in Fargo for a very short stint of time, and his father was an NDSU coach for a short stint. I bet you're learning some new information there tonight, aren't you? So, but it's a combination of his dad would take him on these traveling teams, whether that's baseball or basketball or whatever, right? And so when they came, or football, obviously, when they came home, like he had videotaped this whole thing. He and Trey at 9 years old sat and watched game film and picked it apart. And his dad taught him how to pick apart game film. His dad has also always been a highly intellectual cornerback, secondary defensive player, which Trey was in high school as well, right? So his dad taught him how to pick apart film from a defensive standpoint. So that's why Trey can read a defense so well, is he's been doing it since he was 9 years old, right? So you've got that in combination with an Ivy League intellect, as he was recruited by 2 different Ivy League for academic scholarships, right? So you've got that level. You've also got this humbleness and this shyness and this like reserved but yet extremely superior, confident team leader who actually recruited 20 players to come with him to NDSU. He could have bailed out at the last second and played at Boise State and been the quarterback there with the last second offer for the FBS, but he didn't. He's a man of his word. He's very principled, very respectful. It's like it's an upper Midwest thing, and I don't put down any other place by any means, but it's you speak when you're spoken to. You don't speak more than you need to, so that when you are speaking, people take heed and listen and know that you're saying something worthwhile. It's being involved in every one of your teammates' lives and supporting them and being die hard in your loyalty. Like if Trey ever got into a fight, it's going to straight up be because somebody messed with one of his teammates. Like he's that guy, right? Like he is the guy. They're going to say it in the locker room this year. They're going to be like, holy crap, I want to die for that kid. And you're like, that's what we were trying to tell you all along. And everybody was making up these false narratives. So you've got all of that, right? And that's the fundamental. And then you add on Randy Hedberg to it. In our opinion, the greatest quarterback coach that exists right now. I mean, you can't tell me that he will have produced 4 NFL quarterbacks at a subdivision with 20 less scholarship athletes per year over an 8-year period of time. That's insane. If you go back and listen to what I just said, because I keep repeating this so fast, I realize I'm just kind of spitting craziness right now. But so it's that layered on top of it, right? It's the NDSU way of learning. It's not only that, but Trey welcomes coaching like no athlete I've ever seen. He's constantly wanting to get better. He's studying game film all the time. He's out there adjusting things. He's out there learning new ways to train. He's out there picking the brains of all the experts, of all the pros, of everybody on his team. He's asking them about how to be a pro, about how to do this, that, and the other. He's asking all the questions with the intellect behind it. So Quincy Avery specifically said, like, Trey has this ability beyond other quarterbacks that I've never witnessed. He said, when I teach a quarterback something and ask him to apply it, like work on it and apply it, it usually takes them at least a few days to a couple of weeks to actually frequently and habitually, like instinctually, keep that in the fundamental play of the way that he plays quarterback. He's like, Trey does it within a couple of plays. Like he's like a cyborg in learning how to adjust and get up to game speed. So for us, all we ever care about, and by we, I mean NDSU, all NDSU cares about is explaining to people that are frustrated. It is a process. It is a checklist. And all Trey has been doing is checking off a checklist, right? So last year, say whatever you want about like, well, he had 5 touchdowns and 2 interceptions, and he was this for this. No, dude, he checked a box. That's what he did. If you're like, we're adamant about like, you do not analyze a year 1 NDSU quarterback. You can analyze them from the first snap of the second season, and everything past that is complete fair game. If he's trash, if he's a bum, if he's a bust, then he's a bust and he's a bum and he's trash. I'm not going to defend it. The only thing that I'm here to do is to explain to people you cannot judge him prior to that first snap of the second season. So all I'm saying is, to this point, this kid is 21 years old. He is doing everything that's been asked of him, and in an extremely responsible and effective manner. So that when he rolls on September 11th in that first game, or September 9th if they play the Thursday night, everyone keeps, trying to alleviate my stress, I think. And it's like, yeah, he'll have his ups and downs and he'll start slow. And I'm like, all of us in Fargo, we laugh at that. We're like, that ain't how this is going to go. He's going to start. I'd be shocked if he doesn't start fire week 1. And I'm not saying that he's not going to have his occasional ups and downs. Carson Wentz did as well. But most NDSU quarterbacks season 2 just are a different breed. And I think that everybody's going to see that. And they're going to be like, oh, well, he should have been starting last year all along. That's the second biggest thing. I can't tell you guys enough. No, I get it. 100% get it. No, he needed the entire year, because he has this very pivotal, important thing coming up. And it started this past week. He needs every first team rep in OTAs to be able to build not only that rapport with his other teammates, but also get their speeds down. And by their speeds, I also mean the players like the Kittles and the Samuels and, everybody that he's going to be throwing to. They've got to get his speed down, because he delivers the ball at a completely different speed than any other quarterback really does. If you're right in front of him, he's going to blow your head off with a 90-mile-an-hour fastball. That's something he definitely needs to work on, is he chokes the ball because he has to. So people are gonna have a problem with this spiral. You're gonna continually have a problem with this spiral. You know what you're not gonna have a problem with? The touchdown getting 50 yards in the air in a matter of 2 seconds beyond this nice little arch that all the rest of the NFL quarterbacks are going to be pitching out there, that are going to have a better chance of defenders, safeties, cornerbacks, DBs of catching up with that ball. That's another one of the big reasons why Trey didn't turn the ball over a lot, because he delivers the ball at a different speed than everyone is anticipating. If you'll take a look at his college career, people are like, oh, well, he threw like 20 passes that should have been picked off. Yeah, but they weren't. You want to know why they weren't? Because they came at 90 miles an hour. And no DB or cornerback is ready for that speed, especially not the first time that they're going to see it. And when you only pass 20 times a game, you might only see one of those passes on your side. It's all a full circle thing when you understand Trey Lance's game. So I just think that he is, in all references, the most complete all-around player at the quarterback position at this age. The at this age is a very important thing, but he will have the ability from day one, if you wanted him to be a Peyton Manning and take over the playbook and just be calling plays out there, because that's what he was taught at NDSU. He had full access to the entire playbook. He wasn't just calling audibles. He called the protections, guys. He didn't just he called the protections he went into the huddle, which NDSU is also one of very few college programs any longer that actually has a huddle. But he went into the huddle and then came to the line of scrimmage, chose the protection, which is usually done by the center, and then adjusted the play if need be. And there's double-digit times that I pointed out before that he audibled at the line of scrimmage, changed the play, and we ended up with a first down. Now, I'm not saying that we wouldn't have had a first down, but he also saw what the defense looked like, and it's on game tape of him like making the exact adjustment that he needed to for like a quick out because they changed the DB's position at the last second. Trey's like, okay. So it's the combination of talent, of conservative play, with that like he's the ultimate gunslinger, right? But he's going to protect the ball, because anytime you think gunslinger, you think like Brett Favre. Okay, he's going to pass for half as many interceptions as he does touchdowns. Trey, I think, will average in his career probably 4-1. Like, he's just that good at protecting the ball and making sure not to try and fit stuff into places he shouldn't. And I know exactly how crazy that sounds. So anyway, there's my, I guess, Trey Lance 101 go off the cuff random tangent for you.
And I mean, just for reference, right, when you talk about Trey and Carson's second year, obviously the year he explodes. He is third in the MVP voting, second team All-Pro. He got a Pro Bowl. And that was the year where he only played 13 games. He went 11-2. And when you look at it, the numbers might not pop out to you just because he played 13 games, only 3,200 yards or 3,300 yards passing. But what I look at is the per game statistics, right? He, in only 13 games, he threw 33 touchdowns and 7 receptions. Amazing ratio. Like you just pointed, your prediction for Trey Lance would be 4-1. Carson Wentz almost had a 5-1 ratio in that year, and that was his second year in the league. If you go on Carson Wentz's projection of 253 yards per game over a 17-game season, that's about 4,300 yards, which would be amazing if Trey Lance reached somewhat near that feat even from the passing range. And so, yeah, there is certainly time to be excited when you look at Carson Wentz's second year and you saying how NDSU quarterbacks are primed for that second year in the NFL with that opportunity.
Yep, absolutely. And I don't want people to think also like, oh, so if you're referencing Carson Wentz, he's going to be terrible then after his second year. Now, Carson really hasn't been the same since he got hurt a couple of times, truth be told.
Right.
He adjusted his everything, like the workout, the way that he moves. He adjusted his diet. He changed his muscle to fat ratio. Like, he adjusted like everything. And the only problem is he couldn't adjust him trying to be a Superman and throw the ball in crazy situations at the end of games and put himself into harm's way. So the difference is that Carson is going to have a good year, in my opinion, this year. but I don't think he's ever going to come back to that elite level. I think he'll be a good quarterback. I think Trey will get up to elite level within 3 years. I have projected him as a top 5 quarterback in 3 years or less. And we're on year 2, and I count this as absolutely one of them. So I think this year, next year are going to be extremely exciting years to watch 49er football. Anything else you guys wanted to talk about?
I think we covered the Trey part. And Chad, before we go, I wanted to say this has been an amazing interview. Had a ton of fun hearing you and your NDSU experience. Not only him, but the guys that we like in this draft, Cordell Volson, Christian Watson, and Josh Babicz. Hopefully one of those 3 ends up becoming a 49er. Obviously, the NDSU connection would be lovely. But thank you for coming on. It's been a pleasure, and we'll definitely be in touch.
Thanks for having me, guys. And it was awesome hanging out with you and having this discussion. I would definitely love to do it again.
Definitely. Maybe we'll touch back after the draft, see where these prospects go, if they go to one of our teams, the Vikings or the 49ers. But like I said, Chad, thank you for being here. Everyone in the chat who stuck with us for this hour and a half, thank you guys so much. We truly appreciate it. And we'll be back soon with some more content. Drafts on Thursday. We're all excited. And, we might see some big news in terms of Deebo Samuels sometime soon. So we'll see. Marco and I are out. We'll catch you guys soon.
Have a good one.